Ahoy, welcome. This is hopefully going to be a very quick video about the dialects that exist in Irish. Um, I don't have much time, so I suppose I'll just jump straight into it. Last night I made a couple maps depicting what dialects used to exist, what dialects exist today still, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why you should pick a dialect and why standard Irish doesn't really work the way you think it might. So, the first picture I'll show, if I can figure out how to get it up on the screen, I'll put it here, um, is a map depicting the historical Irish dialects. So, this is what Irish dialects would have been from Old Irish going into modern Irish before a lot of them started to die out, right? So, when people think of Irish dialects, the first thing that they think of is Ulster, Connacht, Munster, and then they don't really think deeper, right? But it actually gets a lot more complicated. Um, you know, even within the dialects, the major dialects, let's call them, or dialect groupings of Ulster, Connacht, and Munster, the speech, the pronunciation, the vocabulary, everything can be so different. So this is why I suggest that you should, when choosing what type of Irish to speak, you should be as specific as possible, right? Literally, if you can, pick a town. Like, you should pick a Gaeltacht, but if you can be as specific to the area as possible, it'll help you as well. So, if we look, you'll see, well, I'm also looking at it on my phone, but basically, hundreds of years ago, obviously, um, Irish would have been spoken throughout the island, and as I've written, the major dialects, Ulster, Connacht, and Munster, or what used to be, instead of Connacht, a sort of central dialect, um, first break down into two smaller regions, right? So Ulster breaks down into west and east. The central dialects would have been more Connacht, and then the Midlands, and then Wexford, Wicklow, and South Dublin, and then for Munster, that's broken down into east and west, right? So no East Ulster dialect is spoken still. Um, it died out with either Rathlin Island, which is in Antrim, or Louth was the last place it was spoken. But this is only like 60 or 70 years ago. The first dialect to ever die out was probably in South Dublin, or Wicklow, or Wexford. Um, I'm not even sure if they got to evolve into modern Irish. So those dialects might be completely unrevivable. Um, and that's basically it. Have a look at that. Have a look at the picture. I'm gonna put it either under this video or on Instagram, and we'll move on. So, yeah, other dialects that died recently were, you know, like recently, as in the last 70 or 80 years. In Sligo, in Roscommon, Clare Irish just died out very recently. North Waterford. These are all very interesting dialects, and they should be. Revival attempts can definitely be made for dialects if they died out recently enough. And different parts of Cork, there were loads of dialects in Cork, and dialects that are on the decline rapidly currently would be in East Galway, they literally have maybe less than 20 speakers left. Um, North Mayo in Erris is really struggling, apparently, I've heard as well. And I mean, everywhere is struggling, but those two in particular. So if you think that's an option, definitely go for it. Yes. So I'll also show you this next picture. So this is a map, more zoomed in, with regions highlighted with little boxes of Gaeltacht regions, so Irish speaking regions that are still actually alive. So if you're going to pick a dialect that you want to still be spoken, which you probably should, have a look at this map, take your pick, and hopefully you can visit there. So just to run through it, going from top to bottom, in North Donegal there's Tory Island, Roskill, Gweedore, and then in South and Central Donegal there's Fintown and Glencolmkill. Then North Mayo, the only North Mayo dialect still left is in Erris on the Mullet Peninsula. There's Achill Island, which is actually really interesting because it the pronunciation of Achill Irish is really influenced from the area, so it sounds a lot more like Galway or Mayo Irish, but it because of immigration of Ulster speakers there, I don't know how long ago, but there was a lot of immigration from Ulster speakers to Achill Island. The grammar of Achill Irish is actually pretty identical to Ulster Irish, so it's actually considered a northern dialect. Then going down, you have Joyce's Country, which is also quite low on numbers, which is a region in the what are they called, Partry Mountains, just on the border between Mayo and Galway. So it's kind of a Mayo and a Galway dialect. Then there's Connemara, obviously. If you're going to learn Connemara Irish, obviously it's the biggest Gaeltacht, which is good to try and learn, but that also means it has the most variations. So it's quite different around Letterfrack to Quashadaga to the Aran Islands, and also, I don't know if you can see on that picture specifically, but Inish Eir had similar to Achill Island, yeah. They had a lot of immigration from Clare, so there's a lot of influence in Inish Eir Irish from Munster Irish. And then there's East Galway, which I said before is struggling a lot. And then going down to Munster, Kerry has two Gaeltachts in Dingle and on Ivera, both on these peninsulae. Cork also has two in West Muskerry, which is a region inland bordering Kerry and Cork. And then Clear Island. Clear Island Irish is so interesting. It's very unique. All dialects on islands, they get to be quite different over time, and Clear Island specifically, I don't even know how many speakers of it there are, but there's sources online. There's sources online for all of these dialects, definitely at least one. You find at least something. So definitely pick which one you find the most interesting or which one you have a connection to and give it your best shot. And then last, the only East Munster dialect still alive is in Ring in Waterford, which definitely still has loads of speakers left. They're all so interesting. They all have very unique features. And I also wrote, just quickly, I did this little map with some dotted circles highlighting which dialects died recently that I think could be revived soon, if you liked. So Going north to south again, Rathlin Island, there in the top right. Um, it could be hard, but there's documentation on all of these dialects. Then a big question mark there on Inishowen. I've seen some things online saying that it could be still alive. I'm really not sure, but yeah, if it's dead, definitely could be easily revived. Would have died very, very, very recently, like within the last 20 years. Then highlighted there, North Mayo and Sligo. The other parts of North Mayo and Sligo would have died in the last 50, 60 years. Then, as I already said, Louth is highlighted as well. Now, Laois, even though it's so inland, on Linkshot, did I think he's done a couple of videos now discussing Laois Irish. I don't know why he has. I'm pretty sure he's from Kerry. I don't know why he has such a deep interest in Laois Irish, but brilliant. So I think if you're able to, if you're interested in reviving Laois Irish, you might have a good shot. Clare Irish as well. Literally, only died very recently. Same as what's highlighted down there. North Waterford, which would be very, very similar to the Irish still spoken in Waterford. And I highlighted, if you can't see at the very bottom left, I highlighted the Beara Peninsula because I found this account. I can't remember what it's called. If I can remember what it's called, I'm going to put it up there on TikTok actually. And it's someone who lives in Beara who is learning the dialect. So you see, like, even though there's no speakers left in Beara, this person is still able to get into the books, try revive it, and it's doing a great job. It really sounds proper. So why then, if there are so many dialects, is there a standard Irish? And why do I think it's so bad? So standard Irish, it's a similar situation to standard Italian, but way worse, because standard Italian has existed for hundreds of years, whereas standard Irish has only existed since 1958, which is only 10 years older than my dad, which is, in terms of languages, that is absolutely nothing. It's no other way to say it other than saying it's made up. Standard Irish was built for the education system to create a standard spelling, right? There is no standard pronunciation of Irish, right? The standard spelling and grammar, the standard grammar is completely made up, right? No native speaker would speak Irish exactly how it's laid out in the standard grammar, right? The Irish word for the standard is an chaidan ifigul, and yes, so the spelling of an chaidan was based mostly off of Connacht Irish and Munster Irish, right? But it took pieces from mostly from Connacht and Munster, but also from Ulster a little bit, and that deal basically meant that if you are a native speaker of Munster or of any dialect, the standard is going to be at some point slightly different or really, really different from how you would understand your own dialect. So that means everybody was getting a bad deal, right? People like to say that the standard was only based off of Connacht and Munster, but that's actually not true. In some words specifically. Now, Ulster Irish does get really, really ignored when it comes to the standard, but some words like this is the word for tomorrow, right? And In Connacht and Munster, it's pronounced something like amoirach, right? Amoirach. And if you have your listening ears on, you'll be able to hear that when I say that word, I'm using a slender or, right? So it would be better for Connacht and Munster speakers actually to pronounce, or sorry, to spell the word amoirach as this, right? Which is what some writers have done. So specifically for the word amoirach, which I think in Ulster would be pronounced something like amara, amara. Yeah, specifically for that word, I found Ulster Irish gets the win, but yeah, there is no standard pronunciation, right? There is a pronunciation that teachers will use in schools, which is extremely simplified and extremely non-native and extremely English. But this is why, right? Even if you want to not pick a dialect, at some point you have to pick a path. Do you know what I mean? So in Ulster, let's say for this word, I think it's one of the most common words ever. Tá. It means there is or is, basically. And in Ulster, they say something like ta or te, right? In Connacht and Munster, they say tá, right? So if you don't say te, then you're not speaking Ulster Irish, right? If you don't say, let's say, if you don't say sail and you instead say seal for the word for life, then you're not speaking Munster Irish. Do you get me? If you say gaeilge instead of gaelic or gaeling, then you're using a Connacht word, right? If you say madra instead of mada or madu, then you're using a Munster word. So at some point, even if you try and avoid it, you're going to be picking words that are specific to other dialects, right? Because there's no standard pronunciation. The standard is simply for writing, right? That's what it was intended for. And I always see online people saying, oh, well, what's the easiest dialect to learn? What's the most simple XYZ? And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. If you pick a dialect, right, based on how easy it is, you're eventually going to find something that you don't like, something that you're not familiar with, something that you would have originally never said, but that's just how it works. Anyway, real quick, as I was saying, when I started to learn Munster Irish, there were things that I would have never said, right? I would have never said vios instead of vime. I would have never said scanon instead of scanon. But just because you would have never said them in the past doesn't mean you can in the future. And, you know, the more things about a dialect that you just learn to accept, the more authentic your speech of Irish becomes. And that's my goal in teaching Irish, is to expose learners to ideas that make their Irish more authentic. And I suppose that's all I have to say. Pick a dialect, be as specific as possible. Maybe pick one just because you like the sound of it, because you like the grammar, because somebody you're related to is from there, whatever. Literally doesn't matter. And try not to hesitate. Just try and pick one and go for it, and it'll be a piece of piss. And I'm going to make videos in the future, short videos, explaining sources. If I find any sources on any dialect, I know already. I've seen Instagram accounts for people from North Donegal, South Donegal. There's YouTube channels with Mayo Irish. There's plenty of Instagram accounts who speak different dialects of Connemara Irish and Kerry Irish as well, I've seen. And it's brilliant. So you really have tons of sources out there. Yeah, Sinead, slán go fóill.